Date with a Debut is recorded and produced on Awabakal Country, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show.
Do you know the massive Coca-Cola billboard?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
There you go. Perfect. I was thinking about the idea of Coca-Cola as this massive, international, commercial, ubiquitous brand. And the fantasy part of my brain was going, what would the world look like if magic was a brand identity like that?
Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you're looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, host of the show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review. It really helps the show out. If you also want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Wherever you are listening, thank you for listening to us and supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Today, I'm joined by Emma Clancey, a fantasy writer and medical student living in Sydney. In 2024, she was awarded the Ray Kopp Australian Society of Authors Young Writers Fellowship. But we're here today to talk about her YA fantasy thriller debut, This Dream Will Devour Us, published by Allen and Unwin Children, which you can get a copy of down in the description. We will discuss some mild spoilers, so I recommend you grab yourself a copy now, or at least very soon. I started off by asking Emma about pulling from her medical background to write her story, and the value that Young Writers Fellowships have on improving her craft. Emma, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Thank you very much for having me, Nick. Just want to acknowledge I'm recording today from Awabakal Country.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and I always, to talk about this book, and it's so great to have another great YA fantasy to talk about. I love when YA fantasy comes rumbling into my inbox and new stories that I can get and get to check out. I always like to poke authors at the start of the show about the origins of their stories. And, straight off the bat, I mean, this book has a medical kind of element to it. Magic exists in the form of these Levick pills, mass-produced, marketed, and profited off by the high class, which is immediately just loaded, interesting, exciting subject matter that I like to do, that drew my attention. And then researching into your background, you study as a medical student outside of your
I do indeed. So
I
clearly,
yeah.
So that unsurprisingly is where that whole concept came from, I guess. When you're spending a lot of your time in a hospital or in a lecture theatre learning about medicine, it's in your brain all the time. And so this particular part of the idea came when I was walking to the hospital where I was on placement. So walking through King's Cross. I know you're up in Newcastle. Have you ever been down around that area?
Certainly have.
Yeah,
lived around Sydney for about 10 years.
Oh, there you go. Well, yeah, you do you know the massive Coca-Cola billboard?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
There you go. Perfect. So I was walking past there every day, 7 a.m., sort of lost in my sleepy brain. And I was thinking about the idea of Coca-Cola as this massive, international, commercial, ubiquitous brand. Everybody knows what it is. And the fantasy part of my brain was going, what would the world look like if magic was a brand identity like that? And then the medical part of my brain went, what would that product look like? Maybe it would look like a medicine, a drug, a pharmaceutical product. And so that's where the idea kind of came from. And then I ended up writing a lot of it in the hospital canteen at where I was studying at the time.
That's so interesting. And I will say, off the back of it, I just now immediately want to know where books sit for Emma, because I love that multiple different brains of Emma clash together to create this story. Emma, the medical student, Emma, the fantasy lover, Emma the writer. Where the hell do books sit in the mind of Emma Clancey?
I think books are at the intersection. I think all those brains are fighting at all times, trying to be heard. And books are actually a really lovely way to tap into all of those parts of me, I guess. We think about book writing as a very creative process. It's a creative expression, but it's also very analytical, or at least the way I write, I think, is quite analytical. I'm very interested in the maths of it, planning out the structure of it and looking at all those kind of features. So it's a nice way to tap into those analytical and creative parts of me.
Yeah, I think Robert Salisbury has a great quote, which is that people often assume that creative can often imply that you're kind of pulling from the ether, but often the best creatives, there's an art and a craft to it and a technique, and actually is quite fundamental and process driven, which I think leads to a lot of success with a lot of great creatives. And off the back of that, I mean, leading into this, you were awarded the Australian Society of Authors Young Writers Fellowship, the Ray Kopp Fellowship. Out of curiosity, because it's good, I always really like to highlight these fellowships and these opportunities to work with to work in that space and have that opportunity. How much value do those fellowships bring, and what did it bring to your work?
Oh, those fellowships are incredibly valuable. So for any aspiring writers listening, keep an eye out for those things. So that particular fellowship is run through Varuna, the Writer's House. There's this beautiful property up in the Blue Mountains, and authors can apply for fellowships to go work up there for a couple of weeks. And it brings value in two different ways, I would say. I mean, in one, the kind of practical way is you get this time to just purely focus on your work, right? It's this beautiful, tranquil environment. You're there with 5 other writers. All of your meals are catered for. You don't have to worry about the kind of practicalities of everyday life for a little bit. And you just get to sink into your work while also pulling from the creativity of the other people around you. We had these lovely chats around the fire every night, reading out our work, talking about what we were struggling with. So there's so much value in that and in the community of writers you get. And then the second part of the value, I would say, and maybe some people would get more or less out of this, but it's the validation. It's going, okay, someone has looked at my work and they've gone, yeah, okay, that's decent. I think as a writer, you're so often questioning yourself because it is a really subjective industry, and you spend so long just on your own, at your desk, staring at your laptop, that when you have those moments of affirmation, it's really powerful. It pulls you on, it keeps you going.
That's a great answer to that question. And God, the thought of actually having time, to just focus on your piece and just write it and be alone with it, sounds like absolute heaven. I'm not gonna lie, because so many people often do books outside of their day-to-day hustle, like being in a canteen in a hospital, or outside of their full-time work, or doing it after hours when the kids go to bed. And it often can be it can, so much of the everyday can often get in the way of the process, which is something that I personally have really struggled with when it comes to my own writing journey. But fortunately, we have a book, and just before we dive into This Dream Will Devour Us, the book's been out in the world for a little while. I believe April, came out at the end of April, I believe. And we're talking in September, right at the end of September right now. So I have the opportunity to kind of ask the question before we dive in. What's the reaction been like? Have there been any responses that have kind of surprised you now that this book is out in the world and having a life of its own?
Yeah, it has been so fun these last few months. Certainly there's a lot of stress tied up in the release of a book. You're going, oh my gosh, this part of me is going to be out being judged by people for the first time. Oh, it's very scary, but it's actually been wonderful. There's been so many moments where I wake up to a message from a reader going, oh, I loved this. I really connected with this character. When is your next book coming out? And those interactions just mean everything when you spend so much time worrying about how people are going to respond to the book. So I've really loved that. I've been really happy as a massive nerd myself to see people enjoying the sciencey aspects of this book. I definitely had some concerns going, oh, are people going to feel like they're being lectured about pharmacology while they read my fantasy book? And thankfully, that doesn't seem to be the response, which is great. So that's been good to see.
Let's talk about this book. Let's dive into it. It's time for us to. It's now the part of the episode where we dive into this amazing debut that we have. And for everyone on the Ubes of Tubes, I have this amazing book up. This Dream Will Devour Us. First of all, I want to shout out how stunning this cover is. We were literally just talking about it beforehand, like all the challenges and all the hands and all the stuff, and also just it's such a loaded image of Nora, like being confronted in many different capacities by multiple different people who are all out of script, not on the cover themselves. So we start this with the classic elevator pitch. That's kind of what I like, because it's a chance for people to meet this book. I'm in a lift. You have come in. You have a 1 minute pitch to hit to me. We're going up.
Oh, no pressure.
What is this Dream Will Devour Us about?
This Dream Will Devour Us. It's a young adult fantasy thriller about this girl, Nora, who wins a lottery to attend a once-in-a-lifetime magical gala held by the very wealthy, very morally questionable L'Amour family. So that sounds great, except the problem is that Nora never entered that lottery. So someone wants her at this gala, and she delves into magical society, gets tangled up in a bit of romance and a few conspiracies as she tries to work out who wants her at that gala and why.
Nailed it. We've arrived. Perfect.
Did it in time? Excellent. Good.
You've got this 1 minute pitch down pat. It's almost like the book's been out for a little while.
I know. It's almost like I've had to say that a few times by now. I was glad you gave me a minute, actually. Usually it's, can you do it in 20 seconds? So I've got the shorter version, and that's the slightly more rambly one.
No, I like it. It was good. And true to form, this is a great, amazing deep dive, and it's loaded and it's filled with great subject matter, and there's talking about self-determination, capitalism. There is power dynamics at play in this amongst the many themes, which really, comes into question. All the questions that kind of come through the story: who put Nora's name down in the lottery? What are the L'Amours hiding? And we'll kind of get into it a little bit further. But I first want to start, as I always kind of do with fantasy, which is talking about world building. I love talking to authors about creating the world, and we have this fantastic world of the L'Amour's family's dream gala. This is the world of the ultra rich. It feels, we live in a time as well these days, particularly within, social media and stuff, where you will see people who are living their daily lives online, and then you'll transition over to someone whose life almost seems this magical because they have unbelievable resources, and it feels like a different world. It's almost like a cliche to say, but like you see the ultra wealthy and they go, it's almost like they live in a completely different world. But in this particular case, it very much is the case, because these are people who have pocketed literal magic and have turned it into a commodity. This is a world of dream engineers, which obviously we'll get into in a second, highly paid magic wielding experts, but it's also a place of inequality, of lies, of perception, of portrayal. And I feel like it really is sold through the world that you create. So talk to me about, first and foremost, building and crafting this world.
Yeah. So I've been a big fantasy reader all my life, and I started out really with second world fantasy, where it's taking place in a world that's totally different to our own. And that was when I started writing, that's what I wrote too. And then when I came to this book, I wanted to do something different. I was almost feeling, I guess, fatigued with the kind of stories that I'd been working on and wanted to try something new. And so here, I wanted to create a world that was as close to our own as possible, almost, but with that layer of the magic woven throughout. So there's this method of studying history called counterfactual history, and its usefulness is very much questioned. So it's the idea of going, if something different had happened at a point in history, what would the world look like now? And that's kind of the approach I took. Thankfully, this is not a historically accurate novel. So the validity of that historical theory was not super relevant. But I took that approach of going, if 200 odd years ago, somebody had discovered a way to create a magical substance, what would the world look like today? And I went down that capitalistic path of this magic would be built into the world's biggest empire, this multi-billion-dollar company that would influence every single industry. And there was so much fun in planning this world and thinking about how magic would be used in different ways. Because yes, it would be used in really serious, world-shaping ways, like in our healthcare, it would be used for warfare, all those kinds of things. But on the other side of the spectrum, it would be used in very small, day-to-day, almost useless kind of ways. How would the rich use it just to enjoy their lives that little bit more? And then with this book as well, I thought about how it would influence the arts. There's at the gala that this book sort of centers around, we see how magic is used to bring artworks to life. So it was super fun building that world and going, how would magic play into every aspect of our lives? And honestly, the biggest challenge was actually cutting that down, because I can't explore every industry, every aspect of our lives in this one book. So there's so much more room there to explore. And I do have another book on the way that will tap into a few extra areas of magic.
Oh, exciting. God, I mean, there's so many other books that I'll poke you about it a little bit later, but I do think it's handy that you do have that I kind of like asked you about your medical background so much, because I think it's a great example of, see it similarly in sci-fi. There's a great quote, I think it's from Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he said, like, in the case of something like Interstellar, where nobody actually knows what happens inside a black hole, for example, you have the facts, take the facts, base your story on the facts, and then distort it at your leisure. So it feels quite grounded, and I feel like that was kind of a similar place with this. The world is here. You can feel that this world is here and existing. But it does feel, I do like that you've kind of taken that what if scenario and used it to build here. And I also completely completely understand the whole idea of, like, I could explore this and go down this hypothetical further and further and further, but you have so many other characters and stuff, things that you need to explore that you can't do. That it means that you're just getting so sidetracked here. And this is why we turn to Nora, who I think is a great character to frame this world. When we meet her, she's down on her luck. We meet her at a time where she really is kind of the backbone of her family right now. Her and her brother, they're struggling to make ends meet. Then her father, spoiler. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler because it's at the start of the story. And
no,
it's like one of the instigators.
Yeah, you're safe with that.
and she's given the choice of, you have to have this particular surgery with a slim chance of success to save him, or you can try this, this drug, the Levic, the levidium moderated treatment, which has a 96% chance of full recovery, but comes with a monster, insane price tag. From that moment, you are in her corner immediately, because it's real chip back against the wall chips about that. What I love about Nora, just straight off the bat, is her resourcefulness. She's a doer. She's a real doer. And you can't help but when, you have someone who is in the situation that she finds herself in, but she's someone who is actively pushing to get herself out of it. She does that, and immediately you're kind of, you respect that as a reader. Tell me a little bit about Nora.
Nora was, in many ways, the hardest part of this book to get right, which I suppose makes sense because so much hinges on your main character. If that isn't perfect, everything else falls apart. And the reason she was tricky to get right is because she's stuck between these two very different worlds. So she's looking at this upper class magical society, and in many ways she resents it because it's that society that has created this system of wealth inequality. It's that, this Lamore family, they are effectively the reason why her family couldn't afford this surgery to save her father's life. So she has so much resentment for that world in a way that I think many of us resent, the 1%. We look at the questionable behavior of some of those billionaires and go, it's awful. Like, why don't they see how terrible this is? But at the same time, we envy it. And Nora, as much as she resents this world and she resents that lifestyle, she does want to be a part of it. Her dream is to be a dream engineer, who are these, as you said before, these very highly paid, very highly educated magic users who are they're funded, they're trained by the Lamore family. So she's caught between wanting to be a part of that world and wanting to almost break it down. And I think that's actually a position that a lot of young people are in. Writing YA is all about exploring the teenage mindset and the teenage experience. And I think particularly with social media, like you were talking about, you see these extraordinary lives and you can't help wanting to be a part of that, but also resenting it. So it was fun to try to capture that experience, but through this magical lens.
It's fantastic. I mean, I had Julie Chen on the show, and her book really dives into that kind of world of social media. And she talked a lot about how, like, with that, you see it and it seems so attainable with that kind of social media space, but really it isn't. Like, people there's a big gap, even though it's seen in terms of wealth and capabilities and stuff, that seems so such a barrier to cross on social media. But that's because you're seeing it there in your hand right in front of you. And the reality of it is that very often it isn't. And that is so much the case with the Lamore family, people of privilege. And I want to actually ask you, before we kind of dive into the other characters in this, effectively what leads to a triangle romance that comes through in this story, about dream engineers, because I feel like this is quite a key part of the story. With their magic wielding experts, I feel like I want to kind of poke you a little bit more about it, because the role that dream engineers plays really actually is it says a lot about the power that the Lamore family has, the literal magic that they have. Talk to me about why, because it's also really important because like you say, Nora envies this stuff. She kind of wants to, there is an element of her that wants to get into that world. It is such a fascinating contradiction. It's one of the things I love about it. But talk to me a little bit about dream engineers and why they carry the power they carry.
Sure. It's interesting because they do carry a lot of power. Yeah, they have this money, they have this magic, they have this influence, but simultaneously, they're a tool of the Lamore family. The Lamore family are very interested in maintaining their control, and they're very good at it. And so this system of dream engineers effectively being selected by the Lamores, being trained by the Lamores, being paid by the Lamores, you can see that it allows that family at the top to maintain control over the high-level magic users. So they're still maintaining control over who gets access to magic. So it's this almost this illusion of power and control, I suppose, where Nora's going, if I get there, I'll have control. I'll be able to avoid circumstances like the terrible things that have happened to my family. But she would still ultimately be a tool of the Lamores. This book is all about those illusions of control and power, who really has it, who's being used by who.
Exactly. And as a result of kind of getting into this lottery and winning, Nora strikes a very precarious deal with the youngest of the Lamore brothers, which is Remni, in hopes of securing a recommendation in this training program to become a dream engineer, which is kind of one of the crux of this, leads to this particular thumb. And then there is also Dom in the mix too, which leads to a very fascinating triangle and ultimately leads to other stuff, which will be a little bit further along in the book. So we're not going too far down there. But these are characters that are complicated with one another. There is a reason and intricate weaving that I love throughout this triangle. Oh, talk to me about Dom and Remy, because yeah,
I don't even know where to start. Sorry, that was a big laugh. Every time I think about these characters, I just go, "Oh, they're such a mess."
I know.
Sometimes you write a character and you get really, attached to them emotionally, and you go, "Oh, like my poor little character. I'm putting them through so much." I kind of look at Dom and Remy sometimes, and I go, "They're just such fools. They need to sort themselves out." No, I do adore them both. But I think messy characters are so much fun to write. You know, I'm just not interested as a reader in a character who is constantly doing the right thing and is super virtuous, because I mean, I just don't think that's a realistic depiction, if you like, of anyone, let alone the teenage experience where you're dealing with all those messy situations of where do I fit in the world, you know, first love, all that kind of stuff. So I have these two boys. So we've got Remy, we've got Dom, and they're both a part of this really privileged upper crust of society. And of course, that means they're coming in with biases and, you know, flaws in the way that they view the world. And Nora, coming from this other side of society, shakes them both up, shall we say, and makes them look at the world a bit differently. Yeah, she definitely does. She's not, she's quite happy to tell them what she thinks, you know? So it's fun to have characters who push against each other like that. And you talked about the love triangle. Now, young adult fiction is so full of tropes. And I don't say that as a criticism. I think it's super fun because it pushes you as a writer to go, how do I engage with the bread and butter of my category while also trying to do something new, trying to surprise my reader? I know my reader has read 20 love triangles before, so how do I make them interested in this one? And I really can't say too much without giving away major spoilers, but I wrote a number of different endings to this book where the love triangle resolved in different ways. And I actually think that helped steer me towards the ending that perhaps felt the newest, but also the most realistic or for these characters, or the most the kind of the best happy ending for these characters, I suppose. The best happy ending within reason. I'm really talking around it here because I don't want to explain what happens.
Yeah, I know.
It's tricky.
I know. Now part of me really wants to see all those other alternative endings that you came up with and like play one of those scenarios in real time with this book.
Maybe I'll release them one day. I've actually had a few readers. It's the most common question I get from readers is, oh, you know, tell me more about the ending, because it is a little open-ended. It's not neatly tied up because I didn't think it was realistic for there to be a super neat ending. I think too much happens too fast for these characters to settle, shall we say. And so I often get questions from readers going, oh, you know, what happens next? How does it really tie up? And often I've discovered that readers seem to have a favorite out of the two boys. Yep. And so they often want to read the version of the book that ends neatly with that boy being the love interest. But I haven't given it to anyone yet. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it one day.
Yeah, I imagine I think it would be such a funny, interesting reaction that people would get to like release the one where X and Y end up happily together, or Y and Z end up happily together.
Yeah,
or X and Z
it's like choose your own ending.
Correct. Turn it into a choose your own ending. But true to form, we will stay spoiler free of the ending, and I'll also stay spoiler free of a couple of other things because, you know, as we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, this world, there's so many themes to this story. There's the I felt like a real self-determination theme with Nora. She doesn't take crap. She tells it like it is. But, you know, this is a world, again, as we've talked to, privilege, late stage capitalism, but also power dynamics, and what people do from their background becomes really, really interesting in this story. Like, questions asked, who put there's so many answers that get resolved. Who put Nora's name down in the lottery? What are the Lemures hiding? And my personal favorite, which is, how dangerous is this magic? Is it actually all it's cracked up to be, which is a big, massive secret here? There are moral questions around the responsibility of not just having such power, but also how it corrupts. And the impact that it has on there. I don't actually have a question here. It's more just like an interesting. I like diving into themes and what I like to call buttons of particular books, and I just found myself drawn to these quite a lot.
No, that's good. I like that expression, the button. You know, what are you kind of pressing on as you're reading through this book? And you're right, so much of it is about power. And maybe the question that comes up here is, does that power corrupt absolutely? Does absolute power corrupt absolutely? And here we have these Lamore brothers who almost exist as foils or contrasts to each other. They both have immense power, but the way they respond to and use that power is very different. And look, maybe that is an overly optimistic, hopeful view for me to come in with. Maybe absolute power does corrupt absolutely. But I think it's another cornerstone of YA to have that idea of hope, to go, that things can get better, that, even when all seems wrong in the world, that there are good people out there and there are people who are interested in changing the oppressive systems that shape our world.
It's a good lesson that YA gives just in general as a genre, I think, because you've got, when you grow up, you do realize very quickly that the world is far from, it can be kind of crap. Let's call a spade a spade. And so sometimes actually having that approach of hope and resilience that YA can sometimes bring, I think, is particularly valuable. That the world can actually change for the better, even if you move the big stone along an inch and you drop dead of all your trying. The world still got a little bit better thanks to your efforts, which is something that is, particularly valuable. Off the back of this, obviously people are asking you books about like, oh, what was it like with the ending with this? What was it like with the ending of this? Instead, often whenever people are like, can you do the book like this? Or can you tell me a little bit about this? What do you want me to get out of this? I instead want to ask, what did this book teach you? What did the exercise of actually making this book and writing this book teach Emma the writer or Emma the human?
Oh, no. You're going to have to cut out about 5 minutes of thinking time here. What did it teach me? Oh, my goodness. There's so many different ways I can answer this. What did it teach me about publishing? What did it teach me about writing? What did it teach me about the kind of themes and young people? Oh, no. What answer do you want?
Whatever answer. You know what? Here we go. Whatever answer that first comes to your head or first comes from the heart, I think.
What do I feel in my heart? Oh, no. I don't know.
Was that even worse?
Me here. Somehow, yes. Oh, dear. Let's say, because we've talked a lot about YA fiction, I'll kind of head in that direction. And I think the process of writing this book and working with editors who are so experienced in writing for young people, and then the process of having it out in the world, being responded to by young adults, I think it's been such a reminder of the power of young people, which I know is a bit of a cliche, but young adult stories are often about young people changing the world. And it's almost a cliche that we poke fun at, the idea that, there's this, particularly in fantasy, there'll be this 1,000-year-old evil tyrant, and then this 16-year-old girl comes along and destroys him and saves the world. That's kind of the basis of a lot of young adult fantasy. But I think there's power in showing young people those stories of them making a change, making a movement in the world, even if, as you said, it's just that idea of pushing a stone along a little way. The messages that I've received from readers that I've loved interacting with the most are often people, young readers. I do have readers in their 20s and older as well, but that real core YA audience, teenagers who, I had a message the other day, someone talking about the representation of bisexuality in this book and how that really resonated with her. And someone who, like me, wanted to go into medicine and how looking at the health system displayed in this novel and its inequalities in this magical world, how that made her think about her pathway into that industry. So I would say that has been almost the learning point, that reminder that as a young adult writer, you have a lot of power. Whether you sort of want it or not, you have a lot of power to influence young people, and that is a great opportunity. But you should tread carefully, shall we say.
That is a fantastic answer to that question. And I incidentally also appreciate how stumped you were on it because often as well, because like authors pick up so many lessons. It's hard to condense the lessons that they've learnt from the art of actually creating something into a single answer. So I think you've nailed it on the head pretty well there in terms of a great response there. And I appreciate that lessons came in many forms for Emma in this story, which I really, really like. And it's good that book, now that even though it's out in the world and has its own life, left that impression on its creator, which I'm very happy about.
Can I be really mean now and say, you asked me that question, so now you have to answer it. What did you learn from writing your book?
What did I learn from writing my book? That's great. I appreciate someone's now turned this back on me. No. I appreciate that. Your words have power. That power is actually, and as well as that, the message has power. I think for me, the key thing that I learnt, for me, it comes in many forms. The biggest one for me was I could do it, which is a big one. Something that a lot of authors struggle with, particularly with the debut, because you're in uncharted waters. There's a whole other new kettle of fish with when you come around to book 2 and you knowing that you can do it, and then it comes to a matter of refining your craft, which is, I think, even worse and even more terrifying.
Yeah.
But whenever I do think about this, because this does come up a little bit, I think I did it. The simple act of doing it is something. You had this thing that was sitting in the back of your head for a long time, and you saw it through to the end. You did it. I think was the best lesson, and it's such a good lesson of self-determination and pushing through and getting that done, and something that you can look back on and be proud of. Considering how much authors beat the crap out of themselves, I think is really important to have that moment where you come out the other side and say, I'm proud of myself. I did that. So I think that would probably be the lesson I took. One of them.
No, I really like that. And I think, as you say, authors like to beat the crap out of ourselves, and often over things that we can't control, right?
Yeah.
We go, are my sales good enough? Am I getting enough marketing? Am I getting enough publicity? And those things are so far out of our control. And we often forget, I think, to look back at what we can control, which is the fact that you wrote a book. That's not an easy thing to do. And so I think we all need to give ourselves a bit more credit for that.
Yeah. The big one I always like to do is sometimes where I go, my book didn't do as well as this or this book here. It didn't become a bestseller. But then I stop and think, well, it got me a door into the industry. It got me to meet a whole bunch of people I got to do. It achieved more than what I set out to, what I was hoping it would set out to do. It did that and then some. So I'm happy. Which I think is a good place as well to think about. Sometimes you're so focused on the day-to-day, you don't actually realize how far you've come.
Absolutely.
With your debut. Out of curiosity, now I get to ask this question. You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what's next?
Many things are next. My problem is, we talked about self-determination. I'm still working out who I want to be as a writer, if you like. So I started writing young adult fantasy when I was 17. I wrote my first book in high school. And because I was reading young adult fantasy, that felt like a really natural starting point. Now I'm ancient 23. No, but I'm a different person to I'm sorry, I can see that statement put you in pain. To be clear to anyone listening, that was sarcastic. I promise.
I'm 32, bro.
You're mature and wise is what that is. But I'm a different person to who I was at 17. I'll give you a minute. But hey, look, I'm sure you're a different person to who you were at 25 or 23 or 17. And the stories that you're interested in telling change over that period of time. So I still love young adult fantasy and I will continue to write it. And I do have another book on the way, which will hopefully be the end of next year. And that is set in the same world as this one, but it's not about the same characters. So it's not a sequel. It's a different view of the Lemurs. So I've got that in the works, but I've also got a a fantasy book for adults that is very different in tone. This Dream Will Devour Us is very fast, fun, action-filled, or at least I hope so. That's what I was aiming for. This new book is much more literary, it's slower, it's a bit more of a romantic tragedy. So that's in the works. I can't say too much about where it is now, but hopefully that will be coming your way before too long. And then just to throw another curveball in there, that fellowship you talked about, the Australian Society of Authors Fellowship, I got that fellowship with a literary fiction manuscript that I wrote because, that's a totally natural follow-up to young adult fantasy. We're jumping from the real commercial end of the spectrum right to the other side. But I had so much fun writing that book. It's a satire about medical school. Clearly, I just get all my ideas from studying medicine. But I've got that in the works as well. Sort of on the back burner at the moment, just because I've got my more upcoming books to think about. But I've got a few things, basically. And I think there's so much fun in that, in not feeling restrained by one genre or one category, even though I fully admit, and my publishers would tell you the same, it's not necessarily the smartest career move, right? You're trying to build multiple audiences is harder than trying to expand one existing audience. But ultimately, I'm writing because I want to write. So I'm writing the stories that I want to write. And that might not be the most commercially or financially viable way to approach the industry, but it's what's going to keep me happiest in this industry. So that's where we're at.
Great answer to that question. I love, and personally, I'm of the bag of you write what you want to write. If you're driven down a particular avenue, you should go down that avenue, and trust that the audience will find its way to join you, or you pick up new faces along the way. Never ever be put in a box. Incidentally, what the hell, dude? 3 books on the go at once. I envy you.
I know. The thing is, it sounds like way too much work, but publishing, or at least my publishing journey, has almost forced me to work in that way, because say you send out a book on submission to publishers, and then suddenly you have all this free time and you go, what do I work on next? So then you start working on something but then maybe you sign a book deal and now you're editing, you're back to that first book. So you're jumping between projects, and maybe you have a 2-book deal. So which happened in my case, where I knew I was going to have another young adult fantasy title, but I couldn't really start working on that second one until the first one was, well and truly done, and I had approval from my publisher on a particular new idea. So then that's when I started working on a 3rd book, and it all just stacks up.
Oh, I love it. It's so funny, and I'm glad that you're working on different stuff, and whatever it is, it's going to be a busy, exciting future for Emma, which is awesome. We'll finish off this podcast with a rapid fire question part of the date, which is basically where I throw a bunch of questions at you and you give me the first answer that comes to your head. How does that sound?
Sounds good, except I'm not very good at answering things quickly, so I don't know how rapid fire this will be, but we'll try.
You are under pressure. Oh, yeah. Ooh, we're going to put you under the pump. No, not really. It's not that scary.
I'm feeling it.
So first up, we start off with someone who probably likes to write. You probably also like to read. Just a small hint. And the first question to open the bat is, what is your favorite book that you've read in the last 12 months?
I've read a lot of good books in the last 12 months. One, I'm going to say 2. See, I'm already doing a bad job at the rapid fire thing.
No, that's fine. People often stretch the rules on this part of the episode, and I'm like, you know what? It's more books. I don't care. Let's roll it.
Excellent. One that stands out to me, this one stands out to me because I always say that I don't like to read horror. I like to watch horror. I think there's so much you can do in movies and TV shows that it's a really difficult thing to pull off the equivalent in a book. But I recently read Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. It's a horror set during the pandemic, which I know some people don't like, but it was fantastic. So atmospheric, so twisty. It caught me off guard a million times. Really enjoy and recommend that. I feel like I should also recommend a young adult fantasy because that's what I do. And one recent release is A Flame and Fury by Michaela Bridge. It came out, not that long ago. Oh, I hear laughter here. Do you know Michaela? Are you interviewing Michaela?
I've interviewed her. She's been on the show.
Oh, what? Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. How did I miss that? There you go. Well, you've read the book, so hopefully you like it. It was pitched as F1 with phoenixes, and that's so fun. The adrenaline of it, the pace, the drama. Very fun book.
Yeah, that is a good recommendation. Michaela is so much fun. She was so much fun to chat to, and I could honestly poke her brain all day about all of her obsession with puzzles and games, but also talking about her book as well. She is so much fun, and I also appreciate that you recommended a horror. There's been a couple of really good horror books that I've had the chance to dive into this year, like Jessica Mansuanara's The Farm, which is kind of as well as Zahika Milden's All the Missing Children, who both of those books were absolutely amazing, but it's more the psychological horror than direct horror. And I go out for that sort of stuff. That's my crazy itch that I kind of have discovered this year, which has been a hell of a lot of fun. Off the back of that, what is your favorite debut novel that you've ever read?
As a fantasy author, this is a very generic answer, but I can't go past, can you see it? Is it? Yeah, it's just in frame. The Poppy War, R.F. Kuang. Look, anyone who's in the fantasy space knows about R.F. Kuang, absolute powerhouse. And it blows my mind every time I think about this book and the fact that she wrote it when she was... I'm now I can't think of my numbers, but I think it was published when she was 19 or something close to that. It's an incredible book, and everything she's written since has been wonderful. She's just, her mind, incomprehensible.
A part of me is like the ego side of me is just like, and I published my first book at like 26 or 27, which isn't bad. Like, that's not a bad time to publish a book. But then you see someone drop it at like age 19, and you're like, and you hit the ground running with that, you're too good for us.
Really?
Off the back of that, do you have a favorite word?
Oh, I don't know that I've ever thought about this before, but I have a weird answer. So when I'm writing, I find myself this is genuinely going to sound so strange, but I find myself really drawn to words that start with S and V. Someone pointed this out to me, that in a lot of my description, I use adjectives that start with S or with V, and there's something about those sounds that, I don't know, I guess tickles my writing brain. I have no explanation for it, none at all, but that's what comes to mind.
That's a great answer. I must admit, there's something about the letter V. The every time I think of the letter V, I think of the opening monologue of V in V for Vendetta, where he takes every single word that starts with V, and it's one of the best opening paragraphs to a character that I'm like, the hell, how did they write that? Jesus, satisfying thing to say of the...
No, there's clearly something satisfying about those letters. I don't know what it is, but now I'm flipping this back on you again. What is your favorite word?
So I have there was a period of time where I did like nice sounding words. So for a while it was succulent, which is the usual, which just because of the different phases and feelings to it, but also what can be described as succulent. But recently it's changed to a new one because I have a little 2-year-old puppy called Lila, and so now my new one is adventure. I really like the word adventure at the moment. Yeah, and it's got a V in it.
Oh, there we go. Bonus points for that.
If you had access to Levick, would you take it?
Wow, I'm actually surprised I've never been asked this question before. It's such a it feels like such a natural question for this book, but wow, I've never thought about that, really. Ooh. I think yes. I think I would be too curious to say no, which I think is almost Nora's position. She, even though ethically, kind of her value system, she understands there's a lot of danger and a lot of evil to this magic. I think she's so intrigued by its potential and wants to believe in it being used for good that she's, really wants to be a part of this magical world. And I think that would pull me over the line.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, I would. Yes, I would. I actually, even with the full knowledge of it, I think sometimes, even if you did have misgivings about something, sometimes it's worth to actually experience it firsthand and see what it does to help. It's me just going experiences in my brain to use at a later point. I can say from first person experience and not just from hearsay myself. So part of me would want to try it at least once, but whether it would be a regular thing, that's a different question. But yeah. Because it's interesting. It's a different thing. Off the back of that, sticking with the world of the Lummel family gala, if you could be a dream engineer, what would you do? What would be the first thing you would do?
Ooh, this is such a me answer, I suppose, but they have different specialties, these engineers, and Nora talks about wanting to go into a medical specialty, so using magic in a medical context. So, that feels like a bit of a natural fit for me. And then the other thing that I instinctively think of is trying to work out if I can fly. Now, the thing is, this magic isn't just you can do whatever you want. It allows you to control the elements around you. So you can control air, but air particles still have a limit, right? Like they still have a capacity to bear weight. A bird can fly, but other things can't. So there's still physics that would play into this. But I so would be there, calling up every physics student I know, because I'm terrible at physics, but trying to find out everything I could, trying to work out if I could make myself fly, which unfortunately I don't think would be possible within the limits of Levick, but you can bet I would be trying.
I would want to try that. I would love to try that. I just take the approach of like Hitchhiker's Guide and just say the aim of flying is to throw yourself at the ground and miss.
Oh, I like that.
I take that sort of like logical mess around with and try and see if I could make it work.
I can see this book has really well. A few broken bones in the process, maybe.
Well, there's got to be. It's science. It's magic. We've got to do some tests along the way.
Yeah, there has to be a risk.
Exactly. Obviously, I picked up on this a couple of times, but this book has a lot of sneaky references to Romeo and Juliet.
It does.
Which comes through. If you could pick another Shakespearean play to drop in sneaky references for your next book, which play would you pick?
Ooh. My next book, the next book set in this world is has some thematic links to this one in that they're both very interested in betrayal and lies and illusion. And I think I could reference Iago from Othello. That could tie in there. Look, everyone loves it, but I love Macbeth. It's great fun. And that idea of ambition for power is also quite relevant to the next book. So, yeah, I would say Macbeth or Othello.
That's a great answer to that. I don't know why. I kind of was thinking about preempting your answer, and part of me had thought that you would go for The Tempest for some reason.
Oh,
just because maybe because of the whole power elements and responsibility of power and oh god, his name escapes me. But at the end, he decides to break his staff, drown his book, say goodbye to his power, and farewell it. I don't know why. That was me just in my own head.
No, that's an interesting one. I actually do a bit of English tutoring on the side. Almost every medical student does some kind of tutoring as their side job. And I'm teaching a student The Tempest at the moment. So maybe it was just too in the forefront of my brain. And I went, oh no, we've got to pick something else. I've thought about The Tempest too much lately.
Iago's a good one, though. I love Iago. Such a good character.
Great character.
One of my favorites. And yeah. Do you have a favorite off the back of romance and fantasy romance, do you have a favorite trope? And you cannot have the love triangle.
That's fair. Well, the thing is, I'm actually not a big love triangle person, which is, I suppose, because often, well, once you've read a certain number of them, you kind of see where they're going. It can feel a bit repetitive. But that was partially why I wrote one into this book. I wanted to see if I could do something that makes even me, someone who's pretty on the love triangle, really invested. So that's my take on those. Other romance tropes. It's such, well. It's pretty much the trope of the moment, enemies to lovers, right? You know, there's the tension, there's the banter, it's all good fun. I actually have a weird soft spot for enemies to lovers to enemies. Because I know, which then it's not really a romance trope anymore because they end up hating each other. But I love rivalries and betrayals. Those dynamics in books are just so fun to read about. So it's not, there aren't many books that follow that pattern, but it's a fun one when I do find it.
And also it kind of also brings things down on a what could have been sort of thing, which adds more color to kind of the cliche of those sort of tropes. So I like that. That's a good one. I like that. Write it in the next book.
Yes, I will. I'm on it.
And then final question of this rapid fire. Are you happy?
Oh, sorry, I just knocked my desk there. That probably gives you an insight into my mental state. But I would say not always, but a lot of the time. You know, as we talked about, publishing is a roller coaster of good things and bad things, and well, so is life in general, right? But most of the time, I'm doing good. How about you, Nick? Sorry, that's a tough question to throw back at you.
No, it's not. So it does get thrown back at me quite a bit. The first time author who really did it to me was Steph Tisdall last year. I kind of asked, "Are you happy?" And she said, "No, I'm not happy. Are you?" And then she said, "Are you happy?" And I kind of said, what matters is being honest. I think honesty is more important over happiness because you're not going to be happy every day. You're going to have days where you feel like crap and you feel like, you know, the world is getting you down, and you have days where you're trying you're just where things just do not go your way. I think the key thing is to always be honest and be like, you know what, this is the way how today is, and this is how I feel today. And just be content within that. As long as you don't lose yourself, I think honesty is probably the more key metric for me. So am I happy? On days I am happy, I own it and embrace it and love it. But if I'm having days where I'm not happy, things have gotten to my head, you know what, I go, that's okay. Exercising self-kindness on myself is the key thing.
No, I think that's a really good way to think about it. It's interesting, actually, in the looking at fiction, right? Because every character that we read about has shit days, right? You know, it's probably not a very exciting book if they only have good days. And honestly, I think that's what makes us love those characters more, is watching them go through adversity and how they deal with it, whether they do manage to deal with it effectively or not. And so we often give, I think, characters more grace than we give ourselves, perhaps.
Yeah, it's very true. But I am happy today. And the reason why I'm happy today is because I got to chat to you about this beautiful, amazing book, This Dream Will Devour Us. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of today's episode, but I just want to say, Emma, thank you so much. It has been so much fun talking to you about this world, talking about this amazing book that you put so much time and effort into. You should be really proud of it. It's a great book. It's a really, really good book.
Thank you. And thanks for having me along today. It was so much fun. Like you were saying, we were having a little chat before the episode that there aren't a lot of podcasts that dive so deep into books, particularly into debuts. So it was really lovely to chat about this one.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to have you on. And for everyone listening, this book, This Dream Will Devour Us, it's published by Allen Unwin Children. It's out now. It's out in the world. You can get a copy in the description. And if you can't get a copy, check it out in your local library. Wherever it is, it's out there somewhere for you to check out yourself. But thank you so much, Emma. It's been such a pleasure.
No, thank you.
Hello everyone, Nick here. This will be the final episode of Date with a Debut for 2025, and I'd like to offer a special thanks to all the listeners and authors who have come on the show, and to all the publishers who have helped make it possible. I'd also like to offer an extra special thanks to Dani V for giving me the chance to be part of the Words and Nerds family. Date with a Debut will be back in 2026 with a new season. However, it is not the end of episodes in 2025. Join us next week for a special mini-series to round out the year, Debut Revisited, where I sit down with established authors and do a deep dive into their incredible careers from their debut to the present day. First episode, same time, next week. Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcast co-production.